All right. DerbyCon 4.0 after party, and you guys are all here. I am impressed. Everybody enjoying DerbyCon 4.0? Sweet. Has this not been awesome? Yeah, you're still recovering. The lights have been turned down to prevent the effects of a hangover. So this morning we're going to talk about open source threat intelligence. And one of the things that I loved about DerbyCon this year was the fact that it was family-centric. And originally, my family was supposed to be coming down to DerbyCon. Till we had this discussion with my wife and I, where she started looking at some of the information. And of course, the thing I key in on is that my talk is bland. That's what I heard. Now, if you read the full thing, she actually did say that. So then I started ranting to Larry about the fact that it was bland, and he suggested we go with another topic. So we're dropping the open source, or the bland topic, and we're going with sexy explosions this morning. So I like to tell people that I'm a jaded InfoSec person. What that translates to is a quarter of a century of hearing people tell me, well, that's not fair, that's not how attacks go, blah, blah, blah. I am not a doctor. I just tend to be more comfortable wearing a suit than anything else. That comes from a lot of years working where I had to wear a uniform. Today's topic is going to be focused more on threat intelligence and what we can do for our organizations. So it's going to be a little bit of technology based with a little bit of program side of the house, business management of a threat intelligence program. So a little bit about me. I'm an Iowa farm boy. This was before I was jaded, by the way. I am a geek. This is sitting actually in my home office, much to the chagrin of my wife, who says I spend more time with this than I do with her. And I can say that that is not the case because I have 4 children. I am a veteran of the United States Navy. Are there any other veterans in here? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your service. Greatly appreciated. I'm a science fiction fan. I am a geek, sort of hand in hand. If anybody can find me, I'm in the one in white. I am certified in different things, but one thing I hate going to conferences and hearing is that I'm certified in this, that, and the other. So I am certifiable. And of course, I can't make mention of a unicorn without that. So while I don't have all the answers, I will take time to respond to requests, to emails, to chats, stalks on Twitter, text messages. Also, it may not be a good idea to let your 7-year-old follow me on Twitter, because I am jaded, and I will post things up like this. That would get you to this. So now we're talking about sexy explosions. So when we're talking about threat intelligence, we're talking about aggregating lots of information across the internet. I'm sure a lot of us have seen the sexy explosions, yes? Great. See if I'm having technical difficulties now. Ooh, amazing. What does that tell us? It looks pretty, right? It's great to put up on the sock when the executives come in the room, because now we can say, we're watching the internet. So what if we had the ability to prevent incidents and get out in front of some of these things that actually are targeting our organizations? Pardon me while I put my glasses on so I can read. So things like sites that are distributing malware, systems that are launching spam campaigns, folks that are scanning networks, knowing where phishing attacks are coming from, as well as where those attacks are originating at. Where we can proactively defend our business and see what's actually going on out there on the Internet of Things. So to give you a brief overview of today's topic and what we're going to do, and this is going to be available online thanks to Iron Geek, who is an absolute machine at getting these things cranked out. If you haven't had the opportunity to go thank him for giving back to the community, make sure you do. Him and his team are outstanding. So in the beginning, So this actually started several years ago. The concept started this several years ago when I saw the transition in the industry, not information security, but the different verticals that are out there across the board. We're actually here at a security conference. Who would attack us? We're in Ohio. That's a great defense, right? No one would attack us because we make clothes. One that got me was too small to be on anybody's radar. That's rather an interesting concept, thinking on the global connectivity that we have. We don't have anything that anybody would want, which if you have a business tell you this, begs the question, and I've been told that I need to attend more Dale Carnegie courses, because my first response was, so why are you in business? Is this like a tax shelter Ponzi scheme, something going on that I should be aware of? We don't have a large footprint. Now, these are some really interesting concepts, which made me ask the following question. Whiskey? Tango. We'll stop right there and go right back to the whiskey. And then I got accused of being a FUD peddler. Now, we all know what a FUD peddler is, right? Sales guys. I am not a sales guy. I'm the last person you want to try to close a sale for you. I was not happy. But it got me to thinking about the fact that, well, if these are the common misconceptions going on, the questions that it brought up in my mind is that were people and executives, management really thinking that this was not a threat? Were they not concerned about it? Who would attack us? We're too small. Anybody in here believe for a moment that if you're on the internet, you are too small? Of course not. I'm in security professionals. I'm in the presence of greatness right now. Thank you. So what I'm seeing is everybody's wearing rose-colored glasses. So being that I'm one of those individuals, and I think there's a lot of people in here in the room this morning that have to know the why, how something works. So what I ended up doing was going at it and approaching it from the aspect of collecting that data. So I had to figure out somebody that I could sacrifice. Now, either I'm too old or you don't know who Lee Harvey Oswald is. Let's just say that Kennedy really should have had a closed top, never mind. So this all started out using a residential IP address space. Very small footprint, very small system. I was just using it to collect data. So the system came up online. I was monitoring it. I was doing that lovely thing of log monitoring. Anybody in here deal with PCI? Yeah, we all monitor our logs, right? Yes. So I put the system up online, but that brought up the question of whether or not anybody was going to attack it. So 34 minutes after the system came up online, it's got its first attack, which, you know, rock on, it's Korea. They're our allies, right? So it's not that bad. The first web attack came in a little over a day later, but that's okay because they're from Texas. God bless Texas. So I had somebody who actually asked me, why do I think I was being attacked? Well, number one, I didn't promote it to Google, Bing, Yahoo, or for those of you who are old enough, Alta Vista. Ask Jeeves, yeah, that didn't go out there. It was not part of any registered domain. This is a straight IP address, so there's no domain association. This is not a new system on the internet. It's just out there. And again, I just threw it online. Plus, because I was doing a little bit of log analysis, I'm pretty sure that's not normal web traffic. So I started collecting some of this data, and as I started going through, I was like answering my own question. Okay, so who's interested in me? So I started doing a little bit of visualization around, you know, where we're at, and you know, these are all open source tools. They will be listed later in the slides, so you guys can go out and do this yourself, because we have enough time to do that, right? Because we go to work and we don't really have a job. We just, Yeah. So, but this could be coincidence because I'm from Columbus, Ohio, and for those of you who don't know, Columbus has some very large organizations. So I might not have been the actual target, right? Yeah. No. However, now, because of the fact that I do have that bulldog mentality, that hacker-esque view of things, I needed to get more information. So I started looking at ways of calling in favors and going the route of honeypot deployments. Now, anybody ever in here work with honeypots? Okay, Brent, put your hand down. So I started looking at different honeypots, and what I ended up coming across was this little honeypot called Diana, which is great because it captures all the information, and these attackers are very willing to give you all this information. But great. So what could I do with it? Well, I am a capitalist, so I keep what I kill, or in this case, what they were able to give me. But what it also gave me is from an intelligence aspect, where the source was originating. Now, not so much what country was the actor in, but where the IP was coming from, which if that system's compromised, bad, no good. Was it automated or was it a person behind the keyboard? Now, after a couple of months of monitoring this, it was really easy to start identifying the automated attacks. But Diana allows you to replay some of the secure shell sessions. So I was able to actually watch somebody like backspace. And I was like, cool, that's an actual person. Part of me wanted to break in and start a talk session with them and say, hey, welcome, thank you. You're going to make a conference. It also allowed me to monitor the historical progression of bad. So as I started seeing the system come up online, and the longer it stayed online, I was able to see more and more attacks. Now, I am a capitalist, so I was taking their tools, and I have my partner who's a reverse engineer, so he can actually tear this stuff apart and take a look at it, and then we just throw it in our arsenal. Because if it can pass AV, because AV is secure, why not use it, right? So it made my job a little bit easier. But we could also use it to start cataloging malicious software as well. So we could use that in the incident response practice area. So this comment is what actually started this off, the Internet of Bad Things. That was where the claim to FUD came from. And for those of you who are unaware, bad things do happen on the Internet. So prior to the commercialization of the Internet, very small and very controlled environment, which, by the way, October 29th, 1969 was not a Friday, so the geeks were not actually, working on a Friday night. Sadly, this was hump day, so even worse. So here we come to today, the commercialization of the Internet. We're everywhere. We're connected via our phones, at work, tablets, you name it. So as the commercialization occurred, we started seeing more and more fraud activity, criminal activity, targeting consumers and organizations. And then we had the game changer. So for those of you who are out there who aren't aware, just to let you know, he seems like such a nice man. He doesn't speak English well. So, what is a threat intelligence program? Is it a bunch of IP packets represented bouncing back and forth across the Internet? Well, yes and no. So, threat intelligence is not Google. It's part of the tool that can be used. But when we talk about threat intelligence, it's being able to ultimately make those decisions. So it's not the Internet. Yeah, I went wrong on that one. Collecting things and doing nothing with it. How many of us work in organizations that are data hoarders? We're going to keep the data forever. Why? So we have to actually do something with the information we collect, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Great. Once we get it, what do we do with it? I can turn it into a brooch. I can turn it into a dragon. But can I turn it into something of value? Threat intelligence is not meant to replace the boots on the ground. This is an augmentation tool. You need those analysts, you need those folks on the ground to actually start taking action on it. Nor is it a substitute for the stopping of monitoring your networks. You have to keep eyes on them. You guys heard of a little company out of Minnesota called Target? They have some really cool things like FireEye, which they're like really good at identifying this stuff and alerting on it. In fact, there's reports that I've seen that said that they had received like 60,000 reports in 2 weeks that they never acted on. So we have a failure within acting on information that was provided. Now, threat intelligence from a management perspective, and this is one of the key areas that we struggle with as an industry, is we've got some really great technology, we get really great people, we're not managing it. Ultimately, the purpose of threat intelligence is to be able to advise our executive leaders and our management staff so they can make decisions, so they can address the potential risk to the organization. So we're going to work out and get this done. So when we talk about threat intelligence sources, where these feeds come from, they come from a lot of different organizations, a lot of different areas. What we're going to talk about today are the three aspects of internet-based, human-based, conferences like this, where we're exchanging information, as well as automated, things that are within our organization that we can pull from. So during the planning aspect, we actually need to come up with a plan. I deal with a spouse that has OCD, so she plans everything out for me. By the way, she was planning to come to DerbyCon up until that comment, so I threw a wrench into that when I was told that I was bland. But we have to be able to address what it is that we want to accomplish with the results. What do we want to be able to do? Where can you get it from? One of the key aspects also is what's the confidence in the information that you're getting? Because the internet is comprised of being able to get data from a lot of different places. We have all these little data islands out there, and we've got to be able to get it to a point where we can actually leverage and use it. However, one of the things that I discovered when I started pulling this down, I was like, great, I find all these sources. So I started, putting all these things together and started downloading all this information, and it felt a little like this. Didn't go over well, because the internet has a lot more information than I could possibly imagine. But we get into the next stage of it, and that's the collection. We've got to have it accessible and available to us. So in my case, because this was a pet project, I went with no commercial feeds. It was whatever I could scavenge off the internet. Had to be timely and current. Why? Because it does me no good to find a list for SSH scanners from 2002, right? Does that provide me any value? Source confidence, is this somebody that's just generating a tool based upon alerts they're receiving, or is there somebody behind it that's actually doing some analysis behind it? And I'll rank that based upon that information that's provided. Does it give me what the information that I need in the detail? So again, different types of sources, and my slides apparently have decided to take their own direction. Because that's all messed up. Oh, that's really bad. I do apologize. So the different types of formats that they can come in, and I do not know why it's doing this. That slide. Oh. So the demonstration gods have warm eyes. And for those of you who are not aware, I am typically a teetotaler. So I do not drink all that much. So it's going to, yeah. You guys had your party last night. So what's the rule? Do I have to chug this all at once? Or can I sip this over the course of the presentation? What's that? Oh, God, this is going to be bad. Now my slides look a lot better now. I'm going to have to find out what happened with those. All right, so getting back, we have multiple sources that we get areas from. So you get information that comes in from groups like that, different formats that they come in. It can be a text file. Whoa. So the presentation's going to get really interesting right about now. That was rather yummy, actually, but... Oh, no, no, no. I'm saving this one for later. Because otherwise, I won't be giving the presentation. I will be laying on the floor, giggling. So we pull this information out, and we get it out across from multiple sources. It comes in different formats. So one of the key things is we want to make sure that we put it into a position where we normalize and actually can use the information. They all give you Smirnoff ices as well? So when we start talking about analysis, oh wow. Normalization, validation, assessing it, and getting it categorized. Why is that important? Well, things like IP Viking or FireEye's threat map are great for getting the view of the internet. But is it relevant to our organizations? So assessing the state, is it something that we should be concerned about? So what happened earlier, was it Thursday or Friday? Shell Shock came out. Yet another instance of Microsoft going, yay, it wasn't us. But how many organizations had to effectively respond to that? Did they know how to respond? A couple. So if we are able to get out in front of that and say, we can definitively say this does not impact our organization, yes, it's occurring, we can give that information and give that assurance to our executive leadership and management. So ultimately, one of the key aspects, and I come from working with the Department of Defense where information is sort of kind of useful, but it has to be able to be actionable, it has to be operationalized. From a commercial aspect, we have to look at it in the global view. So if we start saying things attack branch offices or that are happening in locations where we have a business dependency on, we need to consider that as well as part of our threat intelligence program. Also, it must be flexible. We have to be able to adapt to be able to respond to a number of aspects from various threats and attacks. So from a dissemination, getting information out to the organization, there's really only two primary consumers. We have the actual business units, the folks that we support, the folks that are kind enough to pay our salaries. We want to keep them happy, right? We all like our jobs, right? Well, we don't like our jobs, but we like having a paycheck, right? So we have to give them the ability to make informed decisions. Then we have the technical consumers. The folks that will take the information that we have and produce that in a fashion that will deliver or protect the organization. So from a business aspect, travel advisories. Being able to tell, where a country of origin attack is originating from or where it's perceived to be coming from. As well as the general internet threatscape. Oh yeah. That is not an invitation to give me another one. And if I get another one, I'm going to ask Dave to come here and give me a hug. Because I'm the happy hugger when I've been drinking. So from a technical aspect, what can we turn around and do and use that information for? So we can create router access control lists. So this is one of the things that when I came over from the Department of Defense and the federal government that I found somewhat hilarious was the DoD has a tendency, we block everything and then you have to actually justify why it goes open. Commercially, it's like we're gonna open everything and then shut it down when we're told to do it. But we can create router access control list. Firewall. Now, would this make our job easier if we were able to take that information, put it in so we don't have to deal with it and respond to it? Because we don't want to deal with that. We all like to talk about incident response and forensics because those are the cool things, right? That's what CSI and NCIS and they teach us. That's where the sexy stuff happens, right? If you ever live through an incident, it's not sexy. You will spend a lot of time banging your head against the wall, hair on fire, being told by somebody that it will be okay. Usually when you're told it will be okay, that's a code word for get your resume updated. But what if we could actually take the information we've got and apply it? Allow us to prepare. Preemptively mitigate some of these threats that we're facing. Allow us to do some enhanced monitoring. So with shell shock coming out, some of the signatures that are being made available, we can actually start looking at and following, right? We can see if we're starting to see that traffic come to our organization. Which allows for a focused response. We can actually take the steps to get out in front of these so that way we're not, working until 3 o'clock in the morning. So when I initially started developing this, again, this was a proof of concept and a project that I started in my spare time, which we all have lots of spare time, right? Yeah. Again, free to acquire. Ooh. Y'all had fun last night, now I'm going to have fun this morning. Robust platform support. Is there anybody in here opposed to open source? No? Okay, good. So I don't have to sell you on the idea. I love this one. Easy to use native tools, right? Anybody ever use sed, awk, and perl? Yeah. You work third shift, don't you? But it allows for ease of automation as well, so we can start getting this information together. The open source community does not suffer from a lack of tools. That didn't really come out the way I was thinking. It went differently in my mind. Okay. So I get an idea, which is never a good thing. Because I still like to think that I'm as technical as I used to be, but I am not. So I will bother people after I Google. So I started building this application that would actually start going out and doing the heavy lifting because I didn't want to do this on a repetitive basis. Started getting feeds from different sources that I'd found, which that's a lot of Google time. Although some of the ads that would pop up after I would do these searches was quite unique, and they were not ones that I can show in public. One of the key things that I'd mentioned was the normalization of information. So all these different formats, whether they were coming in an RSS feed, HTML, raw text documents, I needed to put them in a way that I could actually use it. And then put that information into a database because, that's sexy. And then I started getting into the idea of, well, I don't want to have to sit there and query information all day long, so we'll automate it and create a script so that way it'll provide me daily reports. and then provide geographical summarization. Now, at this point, other than the public sources that I was pulling from, I was also calling in favors and coercing some of my coworkers to place honeypots that I'd provide them all over the U.S. Which, by the way, trying to get your grandparents to understand what a honeypot is, not as easy as you would think. Trust me, Grandma, just put it online. Which she responded to with, "Aren't you always telling me not to click the links?" Yes, I'm not the bad guy. So I actually deployed at one point about 15 different honeypots across the U.S., geographically dispersed, both in commercial, which was really interesting because a lot of the customers I was working with, they loved the idea because I would share that information back with them. So now they're like, wait a minute, I can get additional information. And in the back of my mind, I'm hearing, for free? And I'm like, cool, okay, sure, we'll do that. But when you have distributed systems like that, you need to be able to way to get it back to the hive. Anybody know where this is from? Very good, nobody's geek card gets pulled today. I gave that to a bunch of auditors, and they looked at me like I was insane, and then I was like, yeah, this is why I don't like auditors. So I needed a method to get all the information back, aggregate the information, normalize it, process it, and provide the ultimate management report back to me, which was nothing more than a scripted HTML file, because I'm lazy. So ultimately, and this is where I'm going to try and do a demonstration, so hang on with me. So one of the applications that I came across during this was a little application from the folks in the Collective Intelligence Framework. Anybody ever hear of them? Couple? These guys are awesome. Okay, that's not working. Actually, it probably would work, but I'm on my second Smirnoff. Yeah. What's that? No. No. Love you, man. So basically what the Collective Intelligence Framework allows you to do, allows you to do is pull that information in and get it into a normalized fashion, so that way you can get it into the database. But they've also built some really unique functionality, like the ability to pipe it to firewall command sets. So things like, IP tables, ASAs, and being able to dump that information out and have something that you can put into your production network to protect against some of these threats that have been identified. And I can't do the online demo. The Smirnoff is attacking and winning. However, it allows you a great flexibility. So you can pull information around, specifically around domains, phishing campaigns, all these different things, which I think was really cool, because you can turn around and generate signatures for your IDS. So that way, that would make our life easier if we knew something like shell shock was going to impact us. We can actually identify where attacks are coming from and be able to get out in front of that, so that way we're, being able to attend DerbyCon instead of being on the phone during DerbyCon, missing the talks. However, I did have a colleague of mine who said, this is great if you're at the command line. How do you represent this to management? Well, having spent the last several years of my life working in management consulting, I was like, ooh, cool, I know how to answer that question. We make dashboards with pretty colors. And because this is DEF CON, we went with the black motif, right? Because all hackers use green and black backgrounds. But we were able to quickly visualize the information and present that in a way that we can actually drill down into that information. And not to be outdone by FireEye, even though they have a better presentation, I can also do maps too. And I can tell you from a aspect of where attacks are coming from. Now, again, this is all open source tools. So if you are so inclined, you can actually develop this for yourself in-house and be able to act on this. One of the things that we did was pulling out information on a number of our honeypots, specifically in this case, four specific honeypots, and start correlating things like common threat actors. You know, who's touching what. So we see a number of systems on the outliers, and I usually am able to point to them. However, there's a single red actor in the middle, and within those distributed honeypots, different network segments or different commercial providers, residential systems, we saw 8 IPs that were attacking all 4. So now, where can I focus my efforts at? Maybe I should be concerned about those 8 that are targeting geographically dispersed different networks. It might be something worth looking into. So the proof of concept was based on public and private data feeds, public being anything that I could pull down and suck down out of the internet, and private data feeds being my honeypot deployment that I had, which came out with a lot of data. But it was able to produce known bad IP addresses, bad actors, known bad URLs, places we should not surf on the internet, who was active, and where the commonalities lie. Because I can tell you that if, you will always have opportunistic scanners that are going to be out there just, looking for open systems. However, when you can tie that to, we're seeing this activity hit multiple areas, and this is the common threat actor, then we can start taking a little bit more proactive approach on how we protect things. Which slide am I there? So originally, when I started building this, I built this out of spare parts, things that were just lying around my lab, and put this together. Started, again, using some of the native tools. Anybody in here in Perl versus Python? Where are my Perl people at? Yeah. Where are my Pythons? We're a dying breed, aren't we, Perl? We'll be around. We are the next COBOL of the internet. Y3K. So started developing some of the aspects around this. Again, nothing fancy. Found out that I was processing on average about 700 to 900 megs of data per hour, which that's aggregating the information, scrubbing it, sanitizing it, removing duplicates, and getting it back down to the aspect of being able to manage. So strategically, I was able to see who was interested in little old me, able to identify new attack profiles, and one of the ones, and I don't have time to get into it today, how many of you remember the AdServe Yahoo stuff that happened back last year? Couple? I actually have evidence of the attack occurring back in October, based upon what I had seen from some of the stuff, and I was like, at the time I was like, okay, I'm seeing somebody trying to brute force this, I don't, no big deal. And then when the news broke about the EU servers over for Yahoo ad servers getting compromised and being leveraged for Bitcoin attacks, it made sense. I was like, oh, this is cool. Didn't have all the information available at the time. Again, identifying malicious software. It's amazing what happens when you put out a system that will answer like Microsoft ZIFs. It will accept exploits all day long, which is great because now we can start analyzing that and seeing what it actually does, as well as putting it in my arsenal to use against clients. Plan mitigation efforts, how to protect myself. Do I need to add more firewall rule sets in? Do I need to monitor for specific traffic? Again, ability to update, ability to identify malware quickly. Now, one of the things that was built into the platform was the ability to take an MD5 sum or a SHA-1 and throw that in and say, okay, has this been seen anywhere else? Yes, no. If it's yes, need to take a little bit more look into it. and draw maps of interest, because I'm a geek. So one of the things that I did was over a 3-month period, from 90 different systems, being able to gather that log data together and actually start analyzing it. And what I discovered was that ability to identify maps, or maps, right? No, domains that had flagged from the traffic that I'd collected. Ultimately, what I was able to distill that down to was that 3 required additional looking into, because there was no way I could trace that back to an event occurring on my network that had gone out for that call. So actually looking into it. And then from an IP specific standpoint, was able to look at how many people were trying to come in, as well as what systems were being called out, which we were able to actually identify that on my daughter's laptop, she'd been infected, which was kind of cool. But back to the original question. Oh my goodness. Is it just me? How is that coming in the process? I'm looking at it on here, and it's like, wow, wait a minute. And then I see up there, and it's the ice. But getting back to the core aspects, what I was able to be able to define, God, these are horrible, was answering the question of who would attack us. Well, if you're on the internet, guess what? Target, you are one. That there's no such thing as having a small footprint. You're not on anybody's radar, that's a misnomer. But unfortunately, management and our leadership sometimes actually believes that. We're a small regional organization. Who would be interested in us? Has anybody ever heard that? Never, right? Now, that brought up another aspect of understanding, why is it that we're targets? Well, this is an aspect that when we talk with executive leadership, we need to convey, is that the data that we're handling is not necessarily the same thing that criminals are looking at. Criminals very rarely are actually concerned with just the credit card data. They want to monetize the asset. And for those of you who aren't familiar with this, do you guys know Brian Krebs? Might have heard of him, little guy. So this is the value of a hacked PC to a criminal organization and what they will use it for. So we got everything from hosting child porn, which that would be a fun one to come in on Monday morning and find the Secret Service there to, abscond our systems. Accessing corporate email, because that would never happen, right? Anybody ever deal with crypto locker? How do you handle that? Did you pay the fine, or did you just say, what's that? Restore from backup. So criminals look at our systems a lot differently than just what we have. Turning our systems, they will make money off of our networks, off of our assets. Whether it's for direct access to cardholder information, if you're PCI, or medical records, if you're medical, healthcare industry, they will find a way to make money off of it. Because to them, a computer asset on your network is criminal currency. They can trade that. So ultimately, what did I accomplish in all this? Well, I quantified that there is the bad things happen on the internet. Now, that shouldn't shock most of us. However, when we start talking with management and leadership, it tends to shock them very much. Being able to pull public information out and distill that into an aspect that we can convey a message to our leadership and our technical side of the house to protect our organizations is also a benefit. We can bring actual value, because a lot of the time security is seen, is anybody in here seen as like the good guys? 1, 2, 3. Normally security, in InfoSec, we have this, we're always the guys that say no. And really that's not our job. Our job is to educate, document, escalate, and allow the business to make the decision. But being able to provide additional value to the organization and being able to demonstrate that to them is a double win for us. So ultimately what I ended up learning out of all of this, and what that says is that size matters. Although my slides are messed up. Or is it actually the ice? Is this all legit? Can you... being able to find out the information associated with what bad was on my network. Was I going to spend a lot of time trying to track down a ghost IP, or was I able to have the context enough to say definitively, yes, I'm seeing traffic going out to a command and control network, and I have evidence of a known bad piece of malware on that system. Oh wow, this is horrible. I do not know what happened with my presentation. Well, that's the bad part is I would normally agree with you, but it's a Mac. PowerPoint, thank you for the save. It's not working. Again, so becoming a business enabler and being able to report, so issuing travel advisories. This is something that always cracks me up is, well, why do I need a travel advisory? I'm only going to Beijing. So a little thing that I love to tell people, because I actually had an executive call me up afterwards. I was like, so when you're in the airport in Beijing, do not use the photocopier. And he's like, well, why not? They will offer it to you for free. They are stealing your information. Ed, you're paranoid. You don't know what you're talking about. Really? Okay, cool. He gets back from his trip and he's like, you were right. They actually have free copiers all over the airport. And I said, yep. And how many copies did you make? Oh, I didn't make any. How many copies did you make? Well, it was nothing critical. Was it business related? What was our sales forecast? Wow. Okay, cool. But being able to identify also information around point-to-point or peer-to-peer networks as well as Tor activity. Now, Tor is a cool thing, right? It allows us to have anonymity. Is there an actual business function for Tor? So if you start identifying systems coming from Tor exit nodes and touching your network, what might that be an indicator of? Does your bank reach out to you via the Tor network? No? Probably scare you if it did, right? But also, one of the things that we also discovered was, well, let's take a look at our own internal IP addresses in our own domains. And we had actually come across organizations that had been identified as spam relays. And these are not from like 10 years ago, these were like current. And they'd start taking a look because, oh my God, we have a lot of mail traffic going through. And then they discovered, oh yes, by the way, yeah, we still had an open relay. What? It's 2014, right? You have an open relay? Cool. So again, threat intelligence mitigation efforts, what that actually turns into, things that you can actually do, walk away from, actionable. Great. FireEye tells you, they show you the threat map, and Viking shows you, the war game scenario going on. But what can you do with it? You want to be able to act upon it. Again, I have the ability to monitor the landscape specific to an Iowa farm boy. Being able to reduce my risks by taking action against what I was seeing. From a business perspective, being able to understand what the risks were that we were facing so the business can make the decision on whether or not they were going to address it. Has anybody ever worked in an organization where somebody just blindly accepts the risk without understanding it? No? It's never happened. And that is all I have. My contact information, again, some of the thanks and attribution, the folks that have helped me, number of folks that are here, have not been here, and of course DerbyCon for allowing me to ramble on and giving me alcohol. Oh, which by the way, really? You're all going to key in on the QR code, aren't you? At a security conference? No. And I hope for those watching at home later, the links that come out for the organization. Okay, good. Sweet.